is Chicago's morning answer.
Merry Christmas.
On AM 560.
Ho, ho, ho.
The answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I want to play this clip of Ron DeSantis from Maria Bartiromo show on Sunday one more time to inform our discussion with Peter Berkowitz upcoming, because other than perhaps Mike Lee and Ted Cruz, I don't think there's another elected official in the country that has such consideration for the limitations of the public sphere and the lines between the public and the private. And those lines have been, to the extent they were blurred, they've been destroyed in so many ways in so many places during COVID. Ron DeSantis aims to keep them bright.
At the end of the day in Florida, Floridians know we will not let anybody lock them down. We will not let anyone take their jobs. We will not let anyone ruin their businesses, and we will not let anyone close their schools. So people are going to be able to live life. They're going to be able to make their own decisions. I cannot believe that something that started with 15 days to slow the spread, now almost 2 years later, you're seeing lockdowns and closures. There are places, Maria, some of these universities, they force everyone to be vaccinated. They force them to wear masks, and they still lock down because you have these cases going up. And so in Florida, people are going to be able to make those decisions. We do put a lot of emphasis, unlike most states and certainly unlike the Biden administration, on early treatment when people do get infected. And it's not just unvaccinated, like they like to say. Our monoclonal antibody clinics that we set up across the state, the majority of people that go to those are fully vaccinated, high-risk people. And so since we've rolled out our monoclonal antibody clinics, we've had one of the lowest hospitalization rates in the country. So we're going to continue focusing on early treatment, and we're going to continue protecting people's individual choices and freedoms.
It's so important you have a foundation if you're going to be an elected official, a philosophical foundation, because it will be put to the test when you're in power, if you ever achieve real power, because there'll be the temptation to use the power that you have to affect what you want to see happen, even if that's violative of the limitations your power should abide. And this is a conversation that runs through the annals of human history. But again, during the COVID era, it's more relevant than it's been in a while. And frankly, more illustrative is the issue than it's been for some people in a while.
And we're going to have more of our freedoms taken away today at 1:30 in the afternoon when they talk about vaccine requirements for restaurants and possible capacity limits, too, for restaurants.
Right. We'll follow
Mayor
Chicago. We'll follow
Boston.
L.A. and New York, as we always do. If there's a bad policy emanating from the coast, you can be sure that Chicago's going to pick it up. And so Lightfoot will today. That's right. For more on this, Peter Berkowitz, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, former director of policy planning at the State Department, joins us. Peter, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Is that a fair characterization of DeSantis, in your opinion?
It is a more than fair characterization that he's done as much as, any governor to protect individual freedom, and not just individual freedom, but civil society in the country as the place where, as a key place where the fight against the COVID pandemic has to take place, not on the basis of top-down mandates, but on the basis of the good sense of the American people, in this case, the good sense of the people of Florida.
Well, I mean, if you think about New York, too, they've had, vaccination requirements for dining. Their numbers have skyrocketed, so why would we here in Chicago or in Boston copy what they're doing because it's not working?
Well, I think that's right. Moreover, the traditional view is that American federalism, that is, having different states with different policies, is a key to the American experiment in ordered liberty. So we ought to be encouraging against this terrible global pandemic experiments in approaching COVID. And near as we can tell, Florida is doing extremely well in fighting the disease.
You were right. And, of course, that federalism is under attack from the left. We know this with the vaccine mandate through OSHA that is moving its way to the high court, with the effort to federalize elections, the expansion of the welfare state. It goes on. But you recently wrote a piece over at RealClearPolitics.com that was interesting because it looked at the debate within the conservative circle and the debate between sort of the national conservatives and more traditional conservatives. And it sort of centers on this idea that there is no separation between the private and the public. And the public, to the extent that you have control over it, meaning government, should be used to advance, Americanism. I mean, that's the position of national conservatives. And you recoil at that. You offer some cautionary notes on that. Explain why.
Yes. First, we should say that the national conservatives make a number of very important points about the overreach of the spirit of freedom in their attacks on woke ideology. All this seems to me sound, but they exaggerate, it seems to me, in the opposite direction. They want to use government, federal government, and use it aggressively to remoralize society. And down that path, it seems to me, lies danger. The United States was founded on the idea of separation between public and private, church and state. And this, by the way, is not just, as sometimes people depict it, a secular view. That is, secular people want to keep the clergy and religious people out of power. This actually, and in the American tradition, religious people and the clergy themselves in the 18th century wanted to avoid being subject to the exercise of political authority because they believed it would corrupt true faith. So I think in this moment of crisis, we ought to return to the founding principles, which maintain a healthy split between public and private, as imperfect as that may be, and encourage the various sectors of civil society, including the family, including local communities, to be engaged citizens and address our problems.
And that would be, again, federalism or subsidiarity.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that you can't act. So, for example, in your domain where the exercise of your power is legitimate, there is nothing wrong with Ron DeSantis, just to continue with him as an example, getting involved in what's going on with school curriculum at the state level in the state of Florida, because the curriculum and the government school system is both a state and local matter in terms of both funding as well as associated power.
Well, that's right. We should also keep in mind, of course, that education is one of the most delicate questions. The state takes upon itself responsibility for providing education, and yet in a free society, it's very important that education be an education for freedom. So I think it's quite important for Governor DeSantis, all governors, to insist that there be no indoctrination in schools. I myself am opposed to banning this idea or that idea, but I'm strongly in favor of the public authorities ensuring that schools not use the control of the curriculum, power over children, to compel them to affirm certain ideas or expose them only to one class of ideas.
Right, and this is sort of the part of the debate too, is expand the number of philosophers, economists, historians, people that had a material impact in history. Expand the perspective, don't limit it. So you want to teach Karl Marx? Well, you go ahead and teach Karl Marx, but you have to fall. If you're going to talk about economics, then you have to fold in Adam Smith and the tradition of economic thinking that he's exemplary of, or in a more contemporary era, Milton Friedman, something like that. You can't just treat Marx as the one way. It's not saying you can't teach Marx. It's saying you can't teach Marx as this is what this is the definitive voice on all matters economic.
Yeah, in indeed, to be accurate, I'd put it more strongly. You have to teach Adam Smith and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson first. You need the basics first. You need the constitutive principles of our tradition before you expose children to Karl Marx. And yes, kindergartners do not need to be exposed to Karl Marx. That can wait till at least high school. Again, not because we're censoring Karl Marx, but because you need to learn to walk before you learn to run and criticize and condemn. You need to learn the basics accurately, which includes attention to where America has fallen short. But let's get America's founding principles and America's constitutional traditions out on the table first.
That seems like something Norm Podhoretz was getting at, the longtime editor of Commentary, in a Wall Street Journal interview he gave a couple weeks ago, where he basically talked about the forces of the left at present, as represented by Black Lives Matter and so forth, hate America. And he said, the fundamental question today, as it was 40 years ago when he started at Commentary, is, do you believe America is good or bad? And the enemies of America believed America was bad. Internal enemies of America believed America was bad then, and they have different names today, but it's still the same question.
Yes, and I think that actually truth is on the side of the claim that America is good. My own view is if you teach American history straight up, beginning with the founding, the first time ever in human history a country was brought into existence dedicated to an abstract principle to govern all free societies everywhere, a principle in light of which slavery could be seen to be wrong, and you study American history with all the mistakes and backsliding, you would see that, as a matter of fact, the United States has done as much, perhaps more than any nation, face of the earth, to promote individual liberty, human equality, in a tolerant, pluralist society.
He is Peter Berkowitz, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, former Director of Policy Planning at the State Department. Do check out his recent piece, Freedom, Conservatism, and the Common Good, at realclearpolitics.com. Peter, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Or you make the marketing decisions and advertising decisions for a business. Listen up. Once again,